The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber sparkled under the light of three suns. Inside, representatives from 200 spacefaring species gathered for what they thought would be another routine meeting. They were wrong. High Commander Reed stood at the central platform, his tall frame wrapped in the ceremonial golden cloak of the Stellar Empire. He was reading reports about a new species that had achieved faster-than-light travel when an aide rushed in with urgent news. "Sir, they're here," the aide whispered. "The humans have arrived." Reed's expression changed from boredom to curiosity. He had heard strange things about these humans. They were supposed to be from a high-gravity world, which explained their stocky build. But what interested him most was their rapid rise from a primitive civilization to a spacefaring race. The massive doors of the chamber opened slowly. The council members leaned forward, eager to see their first human. Ambassador Jack Stone walked in with calm, measured steps. He was shorter than most aliens in the room, but his black diplomatic uniform and confident stance made him stand out. "Welcome, Ambassador." Reed's voice boomed through the chamber. "We understand you came in one of your species' vessels. Rather interesting design choices." Quiet laughter rippled through the chamber. Through the huge view screens, everyone could see the human ship. It was tiny compared to the massive vessels of other species. While most diplomatic ships were at least a kilometer long, the human vessel barely reached 200 meters. Stone smiled. He had expected this reaction. "Thank you for the welcome, High Commander. Yes, we believe in efficiency over size." Efficiency. Reed couldn't hide his amusement. "Your ship could fit in our cargo hold. How do you even manage interstellar travel in such a compact vessel?" More laughter followed. Stone noticed how some council members were taking pictures of his ship, probably to share as jokes later. "We manage quite well," Stone replied. His eyes moved around the room, taking in details that others might miss. He noted the weapon systems, the shield generators, the security patterns. Every laugh gave him more time to observe. Reed waved his hand dismissively. "Well, let's hear your petition. You wish to establish trade relations with the Council worlds, correct?" "That's correct. Earth and its colonies have much to offer." "Colonies?" A green-skinned council member interrupted. "You mean those tiny outposts we detected? They're barely more than space stations." Stone kept his diplomatic smile fixed in place. "Size isn't everything, council member. Sometimes the smallest packages contain the most interesting surprises." "How quaint," Reed said. He turned to address the full council. "Members, we have protocols about accepting new species into our trading network. They must meet certain standards." He looked down at Stone. "I'm afraid humanity's current level of development falls short of these standards." The council chamber filled with murmurs of agreement. Stone noticed how quickly they reached this conclusion, how easily they dismissed humanity based on appearances. "Perhaps you'd like to review our technical specifications," Stone offered, knowing they would refuse. "Not necessary," Reed said. "We've seen enough. Your petition for trade relations is denied. You may try again in 50 standard years, assuming your civilization manages to advance sufficiently by then." Stone bowed slightly. "As you wish. Though I hope you remember this meeting. It might become historically significant." "Oh," Reed raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "Because," Stone said as he turned to leave, "it's not every day you get the chance to avoid making the huge mistake." The council laughed one final time as Stone walked out. None of them noticed how his eyes had recorded every defensive position, every security checkpoint, every potential weakness in the chamber. Back on his ship, Stone sent a short encoded message to Earth Defense Command. They took the bait, proceeding with Phase 2. The tiny human vessel powered up its engines and departed, leaving behind a council that thought they had just dismissed a primitive species. They would soon learn that assuming something is harmless just because it's small can be a very, very big mistake. 3 months after humanity's dismissal from the Galactic Council, Captain Tom Walker sat in his small observation post on the edge of human space. His eyes were fixed on a holographic display showing massive enemy fleet movements. The Stellar Empire wasn't even trying to hide their actions anymore. "They really think we're blind and stupid," he muttered, watching another Empire battleship pass through the sector. The massive vessel was nearly 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could destroy a small moon. His communication console blinked. "Captain, you need to see this," his sensor officer reported. "They're setting up supply lines. Big ones." Walker looked at the new data and felt his stomach tighten. The Empire was preparing for a major operation. Their supply ships were forming a clear path, straight toward Earth's colonies. "Send everything to command," he ordered. "And make sure they don't spot our probes." The tiny observation post, disguised as a piece of space debris, continued its silent watch. The Empire's ships passed right by, never noticing the advanced sensors hidden in what looked like an old satellite. At Earth Defense Command Headquarters, buried deep under the Pacific Ocean, military leaders gathered in an emergency meeting. The room was simple and functional, just like human ships, and just as deceptive in its capabilities. Admiral James Morgan stood before a large tactical display. "The Empire is preparing for what they call a pacification mission," he announced. "They plan to take our colonies and force Earth to accept their protection." "How many ships?" someone asked. 300 capital ships, each one bigger than anything we've officially shown them." Morgan smiled grimly. "They think it's overkill for our tiny fleet." The room filled with knowing looks. General Lisa Hayes, head of strategic operations, stepped forward. "Is everything in place?" Morgan nodded. "Our real fleet is hidden exactly where they'd never think to look." He pressed a button, and the display showed hundreds of small dots scattered throughout asteroid fields, gas clouds, and other empty spaces. "They're so focused on size, they never considered why our ships are so small." "What about the new weapons?" Hayes asked. "Ready and tested. The Empire's shields can't stop what they don't know exists." The meeting continued as they refined their plans. Earth's leaders had expected this. The Stellar Empire had a long history of absorbing primitive species into their empire, usually through a show of overwhelming force. Their massive ships would arrive, demand surrender, and add another species to their collection of vassals. Back in space, the Empire's fleet commander, Grand Admiral Voss, reviewed the invasion plans with satisfaction. His flagship was the size of a large city, making human vessels look like toys in comparison. "Sir," his aide reported, "scout ships report minimal activity in human space. Their few visible ships appear to be running routine patrols. Most are cargo vessels and small military escorts." Voss laughed. "As expected. These humans don't even realize what's coming. Their biggest military ship is smaller than our medical frigates." "Should we be concerned about their level of technology?" the aide asked. "Some analysts suggest their small size might indicate advanced engineering." "Nonsense," Voss dismissed the concern. "You've seen their diplomatic vessel. If they had advanced technology, they would build proper ships like civilized species do. No, they're just primitive beings who manage to achieve spaceflight through luck." The massive invasion fleet continued its preparation, its commanders confident in their overwhelming superiority. Nobody questioned why humans built such small ships. Nobody wondered about the strange gaps in their intelligence reports. And nobody noticed the countless tiny probes watching their every move. In his observation post, Captain Walker sent one final message to Earth. "They've taken the bait completely. Operation Trojan Horse is ready for Phase 3. The storm was about to break, and the Empire had no idea they were sailing straight into a hurricane of their own making." The Empire's invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Winter Colony, Earth's outermost settlement. 300 massive warships filled the starscape, their metal hulls gleaming under the light of distant stars. Each ship carried enough firepower to level a continent. Grand Admiral Voss stood on his flagship's bridge, watching the small human colony through the main viewport. Winter Colony was little more than a collection of domed structures on an icy planet, protected by what appeared to be a handful of patrol ships. "Send the demands," Voss ordered. "Let's see how quickly these humans surrender when faced with real power." The message was broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Grand Admiral Voss of the Stellar Empire. Your species has been deemed in need of protection and guidance. Surrender now, and you will be treated fairly as subjects of the Empire." Deep in Earth's military command center, Admiral Jane Cooper watched the situation unfold. Her weathered face showed no fear as she studied the tactical displays. The Empire's ships looked like massive red triangles, arranged in traditional attack formation. "They're so predictable," she muttered. "Status of our forces." Her tactical officer responded quickly. "All ships in position, Admiral. The Empire still hasn't detected our stealth units. They're only seeing our decoy fleet." Cooper nodded. The decoy fleet consisted of 20 older ships, deliberately made visible to the enemy. They were small, lightly armed vessels that looked exactly like what the Empire expected from primitive humans. "Winter Colony reports all civilians have been evacuated through the underground tunnels," another officer reported. "Only drone operators remain in the bunkers." "Perfect." Cooper pressed a button on her command chair. "All ships, execute Operation Trojan Horse. Phase 3 is now active." Back at Winter Colony, the Empire's commanders watched with amusement as the human ships began what looked like a panicked response. The small vessels moved erratically, as if their crews were desperately trying to form some kind of defense. "Look at them scatter," Voss laughed. "Their largest ship is barely the size of our scout vessels." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target their primary defense station. Let's show them what real military power looks like." The Empire's flagship charged its main cannon, gathering enough energy to vaporize the entire colony's defense network. The weapon's charging sequence was deliberately slow and visible, designed to strike fear into their opponents. But something strange was happening. The human ships, instead of fleeing or surrendering, were spreading out in an unusual pattern. They moved with a precision that seemed odd for such primitive vessels. "Sir," a sensor officer called out, his voice uncertain, "I'm detecting some strange energy readings from the human ships." Voss frowned. "What kind of readings?" "Unknown, sir. They're like nothing in our database." And the officer paused, checking his instruments again. "Sir, I'm picking up more signals. Many more." Suddenly, space itself seemed to ripple around the Empire's fleet. Small distortions appeared everywhere, like heat waves on a summer day. From these distortions emerged hundreds of human ships, each one as small as the others, but somehow different. "Impossible," Voss shouted. "Where did they come from? Why didn't we detect them?" Admiral Cooper's voice came through on all channels, calm and clear. "This is Earth Defense Command to Empire forces. You're surrounded. The funny thing about building small ships is that they're very easy to hide. Would you like to see what else we've been hiding?" Before Voss could respond, the small human vessels began to move in perfect coordination. Their formation wasn't random at all. It was a carefully planned attack pattern, developed through centuries of naval warfare on Earth and adapted for space. The Empire's mighty fleet was about to learn why humanity's ships were small. Sometimes, the most dangerous predator isn't the biggest one. It's the one you never see coming until it's too late. The first shot of the battle wasn't a massive energy beam or a nuclear missile. It was almost invisible, a tiny pulse of quantum energy from a human ship no bigger than a passenger aircraft. The pulse passed straight through the Empire flagship's shields, as if they didn't exist. Inside his massive command ship, Grand Admiral Voss watched in horror as his primary weapons system suddenly went dead. "What just happened?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir," his weapons officer shouted. "The shields didn't even register an attack, but our main cannon is completely offline." More quantum pulses flashed across space. Each time, another major system on an Empire ship would simply stop working. No explosions, no damage, just critical systems going quiet. Captain Tom Walker led his squadron of small ships through the Empire's formation. His vessel, barely visible against the backdrop of space, moved with incredible speed. "Remember your training," he told his pilots. "Use your size to your advantage. Their big guns can't hit what they can't track." The human ships darted between the massive Empire vessels like mosquitoes around elephants, but these mosquitoes had very sharp stingers. Each pass disabled another weapon system, another engine cluster, another shield generator. "Impossible." Voss slammed his fist on his command console. "They're using our size against us. Our weapons can't lock onto such small targets moving so fast." Admiral Cooper's voice came through the command channel again. "Having trouble with your targeting systems, Admiral. Maybe you should have built smaller ships." Her tone was calm, almost friendly. "Did you ever wonder why we made our ships so small? It wasn't because we couldn't build bigger ones." As if to prove her point, 3 human ships flew directly through the gap between 2 Empire battleships, a maneuver that would have been impossible for larger vessels. As they passed, both Empire ships lost power to their engines. "Status report," Voss demanded. "Sir, 40% of the fleet is reporting critical system failures. Our shields are useless against whatever weapons they're using. And," the tactical officer paused, checking his readings again, "we still can't get a solid lock on their ships. They're too small and too fast." The human fleet moved with perfect coordination, like a school of fish surrounding a group of whales. Each ship knew its role, its position, its targets. This wasn't just a battle. It was a dance they had practiced for years. Walker's squadron swept past another Empire dreadnought. "Look at their weapon mounts," he told his pilots, "all designed to hit big targets at long range." They never considered they might need to fight something smaller than a moon. The Empire ships tried to adapt, tried to adjust their tactics, but their massive vessels were designed for grand battles between equally huge ships, trading powerful blows at long range. They were never meant to fight an enemy that could fly circles around them. "Sir," Voss's tactical officer reported, his voice shaking, "we've lost weapons on 70% of our ships. Engines are failing across the fleet." And he swallowed hard. "We still don't understand how they're doing it." Admiral Cooper's voice returned. "That's the problem with building bigger and bigger ships, Admiral. You forget that nature's deadliest creatures aren't always the largest. Ask any human about mosquitoes, or viruses, or bacteria. Sometimes the smallest opponents are the most dangerous." The battle continued, but it wasn't really a battle anymore. It was a demonstration. The tiny human ships, products of centuries of warfare and technological advancement, systematically disabled the Empire's mighty fleet. They didn't need to destroy the massive ships. They simply turned them into powerless hulks floating in space. Voss stood on his darkening bridge, watching his mighty fleet fall silent ship by ship, and finally understood. Size wasn't everything. The humans hadn't built small ships because they had to. They had built them because they chose to. And that choice had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Admiral Jane Cooper watched her tactical display with satisfaction as hundreds more human ships dropped their stealth fields. Like a swarm of angry bees, they emerged from hiding places all around the Empire fleet, behind asteroids, inside gas clouds, and even clinging to the dark sides of nearby moons. "Launch Phase 2, she ordered calmly. "Let's show them what else these tiny ships can do." The human vessels moved in perfect formation, creating complex patterns that seemed random at first. But there was nothing random about it. Each movement was carefully planned, each position precisely calculated. Inside his crippled flagship, Grand Admiral Voss watched with growing dread. "How many ships do they have?" "At least 500 confirmed signatures," his sensor officer reported. "Maybe more. They're moving too fast to get an exact count." Voss slammed his fist on his command chair. "Impossible. Their entire fleet was supposed to be less than 50 ships." "Sir," another officer called out, They're forming some kind of attack pattern. Energy readings are off the charts. The human ships had indeed formed a pattern. Hundreds of small vessels arranged in concentric circles around the Empire fleet. Each circle began spinning in the opposite direction from its neighbors, creating a complex web of overlapping flight paths. Captain Walker's voice crackled over the general command channel. All ships, activate quantum resonance fields on my mark. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. As each human ship activated its quantum field, it linked with the fields of nearby ships. The overlapping patterns of movement amplified the effect, creating a massive energy web that enclosed the entire Empire fleet. "What are they doing?" Voss demanded, but deep down, he already knew. They weren't just fighting his ships, they were trapping them. Admiral Cooper's voice came through again. "You see, Admiral Voss, when we designed our ships, we didn't just think about individual combat. We thought about how they could work together. Each of our ships is part of a larger whole. Together, they can do things that no single massive ship could ever achieve." The energy web tightened. Empire ships that still had power tried to escape, but their massive size worked against them. There wasn't enough room to maneuver between the quantum field lines. "All ships, execute final attack pattern," Cooper commanded. "Show them why humanity chose quality over quantity." The human vessels moved again, this time in a spiraling pattern that looked like a closing flower. As they moved, their quantum weapons fired in perfect sequence. Each shot was precisely timed, precisely aimed. Where the Empire's weapons had been designed to destroy, the human weapons had been created to disable. One by one, the mighty Empire ships went dark. Engines died. Weapons fell silent. Life support systems switched to emergency power. "Status report," Voss shouted, though he could see the answer on his failing displays. "Total system failure across the fleet," his officer reported quietly. "We're dead in space, sir. All 300 ships, neutralized." Through his viewport, Voss watched the human ships continue their dance around his helpless fleet. Their formation was beautiful in its complexity, deadly in its efficiency. These weren't just ships, they were instruments in a symphony of space warfare. Admiral Cooper made one final transmission. "Grand Admiral Voss, your fleet is now completely under our control. We could destroy your ships if we wanted to. Instead, we're giving you a choice. Surrender now, and we'll help you get your crews home safely. Refuse, and we'll leave you floating here while we go deal with the rest of the Empire's forces. You have 10 minutes to decide." In the silence that followed, Voss looked at his mighty fleet, the pride of the Empire, now helpless against an enemy they had laughed at just hours before. The humans hadn't just beaten them, they had revolutionized space warfare itself. He reached for his communication console, ready to give the hardest order of his career. Sometimes, he realized, the greatest power comes in the smallest packages. The Galactic Council chamber was silent as the battle recordings played on the main screen. Representatives from 200 species watched in stunned silence as the tiny human ships systematically disabled the Empire's mighty fleet. When the recording ended, the silence continued for several long moments. High Commander Reed stood at his podium, his golden cloak no longer seeming as impressive as it had 3 months ago. His voice shook slightly as he spoke. "The Empire fleet's defeat has been confirmed. 300 of our most powerful warships, neutralized without a single casualty on either side." The chamber erupted in whispers and hurried conversations. Some representatives were already sending urgent messages back to their homeworlds. The balance of power they had known for centuries had just been shattered. Ambassador Jack Stone walked into the chamber, wearing the same simple black uniform he had worn during his first visit. But this time, no one laughed at him. Every eye in the room followed his movement with careful attention. "Members of the Council," Stone began, his voice calm and measured. 3 months ago, you dismissed humanity as primitive because our ships were small. Today, I'm here to help you understand why that was a mistake. The main screen changed to show detailed images of the human ships in action. Our vessels aren't small because we can't build bigger ones, Stone explained. They're small because that's what works best. While you were building bigger ships to show your power, we were building smarter ones to actually use power effectively. In the back of the chamber, representatives from smaller species were paying particularly close attention. Many of them had suffered under the Empire's protection for centuries. The Empire's defeat wasn't just about technology, Stone continued. It was about imagination, about thinking differently, about understanding that bigger isn't always better. High Commander Reed stepped forward, his face tight with barely controlled anger. Are you here to gloat, Ambassador? To humiliate the Empire further? Stone shook his head. No, Commander. I'm here to offer peace. The same peace we wanted 3 months ago. The only difference is that now you understand we're offering it as equals, not as primitives. The chamber's atmosphere changed. Many council members looked relieved. They had feared the humans would seek revenge or try to replace the Empire as the galaxy's bullies. Furthermore, Stone added, we're willing to share some of our defensive technology with other species. Not the weapons, but the protection systems. No species should have to live in fear of being pacified by a stronger neighbor. This announcement caused another stir. Several of the smaller species representatives were openly smiling now. The Empire's representatives looked like they had swallowed something sour. You're disrupting centuries of established order, Reed protested. No, Stone corrected him. We're creating a new order, one based on mutual respect rather than intimidation. One where the size of your ships doesn't determine the worth of your species. From his seat, a representative of a small aquatic species spoke up. How do we know you won't use your power the same way the Empire did? Stone smiled. Because we remember what it's like to be the underdog. Earth's history is full of stories where the smaller force defeated a larger one through ingenuity and determination. We have no interest in becoming the very thing we just defeated. The council chamber buzzed with activity as representatives debated this new reality. The Empire's dominance was broken, but instead of chaos, the humans were offering stability. Instead of revenge, they were offering cooperation. As the debate continued, Stone sent a brief message to Earth. Phase 6 complete. The galaxy is starting to understand. Humanity isn't here to conquer. We're here to change the rules of the game. In the space around Winter Colony, the Empire's massive ships were being towed back to their home systems by tiny human vessels, a powerful symbol of how completely the tables had turned. 1 year after the Battle of Winter Colony, the galaxy was a very different place. The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber had been redesigned. Instead of the towering central podium that had once dominated the room, there was now a circular arrangement of equal-sized platforms. It was a small change, but it sent a powerful message. No species stood above the others. Ambassador Jack Stone sat at Earth's platform, watching as representatives from 30 different worlds signed the new Mutual Defense Treaty. Each signing ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy. The Empire's representative was among them, though they no longer wore the golden cloaks of conquest. Who would have thought? Admiral Cooper said from her seat beside Stone. That our tiny ships would lead to this. Stone smiled, remembering that first dismissive meeting. Sometimes the smallest changes have the biggest effects. The signing ceremony paused as a new group of representatives entered the chamber. These were from worlds that had never had a voice in galactic politics before, species whose ships had been considered too small or too primitive to matter. The galaxy is changing, Cooper observed. And for once, it's changing because of brain, not brawn. She was right. In the years since the Empire's defeat, humanity had kept its promise. They shared defensive technology with smaller species, helped establish new trade routes, and promoted cooperation instead of competition. The human fleet, still composed of those surprisingly small ships, now served as peacekeepers rather than conquerors. Captain Walker, recently promoted to fleet commander, approached their platform with a data tablet. The latest reports from the border regions, he reported, piracy is down 80% since we started the Joint Patrol program. The Joint Patrols were another human innovation, ships from different species working together, learning from each other. The Empire's massive vessels now worked alongside the smaller ships they had once mocked, each bringing their own strengths to the mission. And the Empire? Stone asked. How are they adapting? Walker grinned. They're actually building smaller ships now. Their engineers finally admitted that bigger isn't always better. Some of their new designs are quite impressive. In space around the Council world, the change was visible. Ships of all sizes moved in organized patterns. Massive Empire cargo haulers, mid-sized trading vessels, and small, agile patrol craft. Each had its role, its purpose. None were mocked or dismissed because of their size. High Commander Reed, now serving as the Empire's chief diplomat rather than its military leader, approached the human platform. He looked older, but perhaps wiser. Ambassador Stone, he said formally. A year ago, I thought your small ships were a sign of weakness. I've never been more wrong in my life. Stone nodded in acknowledgement. The greatest strength often lies in knowing your true advantages. Size is just one factor among many. A lesson we learned the hard way, Reed admitted. But perhaps it was a lesson we needed to learn. The Empire had become too focused on showing power rather than using it wisely. The chamber grew quiet as the final treaties were signed. It was official. The galaxy had entered a new era, one where the size of your ships didn't determine your worth, where cooperation meant more than intimidation, and where even the smallest voice could be heard. As the ceremony concluded, Stone sent his final report to Earth. Mission accomplished. The galaxy understands now. Humanity didn't come to dominate. We came to elevate. To show that true strength isn't about size or power, but about how you use what you have. In the space above, a formation of ships passed by the Council Chamber's viewports, massive Empire battleships, mid-sized alien cruisers, and small human vessels, all flying together. It was a powerful symbol of the new order, a galaxy where every ship, like every species, had its place. The tiny fleet that had been mocked just a year ago had done more than win a battle. It had changed the very nature of power in the galaxy, and it had done it not through force or fear, but through innovation, strategy, and the wisdom to know that sometimes the smallest changes make the biggest difference.